Hello, Facebook. Welcome back to the Henry Holster Shop. It is Friday evening. Tonight we're talking about my first holster, which is kind of a mixed topic, always a little bit embarrassing to show somebody your first holster because most of our first holsters weren't that great, and you know, there's been a long way to come since that first holster. So, got my mic on, got my cup of tea, got my first holster, my Glock. Hello, Greg Swanson. Thank you for stopping in. I got my toasty down jacket on tonight. I had the heat off in the shop earlier when I went inside for dinner. Hello, Kyle Shook. What's fun this week? Oh, I got a new pen holder. Qualichem sent me a barrel. I wish it was a barrel of their top expensive coolant, but it's just a barrel for my pens. Hello, Nicholas Pratt. Nick, you asked about delivery time frame on the oil mist eliminator kits. I know they do not have all of them in stock. Hello, Tony. I meant to respond to your text earlier. I'm sorry. It's been a crazy day. Hello, Thomas Tower from Grayman Solutions in Oklahoma. Thank you for stopping in. Hello, Brandon from Crotac. As usual, if you are a Codex holster company, please tag your company name in the comments. On Point Holsters is here. And then please also like and share the feed. It's a lot of fun for me to spend these evenings with you and talk about what's on my mind in my business. It's also very helpful for me if you guys can do me a favor and share the feed so that my work has a little bit more reach and more people have a chance to come across it and interact with it. I learn from them, they learn from me. It benefits everybody. Got the AR mag pouch today and love it. Alan, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate you being cool about waiting until after SHOT Show to get that shipped. But Nicholas Pratt had asked about delivery on the oil mist eliminators. If you guys didn't know this was up, I'm putting together a batch order for the oil mist eliminator filter that I mount on my Robinair 15800 vacuum pump. And the Robinair does not use a standard vacuum fitting on its exhaust piping. And so we have to have a special adapter made up by the company that makes the actual filter. And they don't stock them. It's an uncommon item. Hey, Chris. Chris, did you make sure to let your wife know that there's another Facebook Live happening tonight so she can watch it while she grades her papers? I'll make jokes about red pens, and she'll get them because it's all about that teacher life. So most of the batch is going to be built to order because guys who get an oil mist eliminator and an adapter will be getting the whole thing as a set, and they're going to have to make the adapters up. So I'm hoping to get 35 to 40 guys on board because anything less than that, and they didn't even want to bother with the hassle of making the adapter. I thought when I first bought mine 2 years ago that it was just going to be a piece of pipe with a turned inner diameter. But there's a little more to it. It's got a flange and some other things that make it a little more than just I could make this myself out of PVC kind of thing. So I think the adapter's worth having. It's nice to have it be just a plug-and-play thing that just drops on the pump. You clamp it in place, tighten it down, and you're good to go. She's watching with me tonight, says Chris Williamson. Hello, Mrs. Williamson. Thank you for watching the Facebook Live feeds. Steve Martis is in. So if you've just joined in the past 2 minutes, please like the feed. Please share the feed on your page. And Mark Lancaster's here. Is your wife fully recovered from SHOT Show week? Seems like it was a busy week for everybody out there in Vegas, Mark. So earlier this week, I scalded my mouth pretty bad. I'm trying to think, it was the day after I did my last Facebook Live feed. Anyway, my mouth was like scalded, and the roof of my mouth was bleeding the next day. It was that bad. Not fun. So I've mostly got it back. I've been trying not to talk too much the past couple of days, which my wife has been loving because it means that now she can talk to me all she wants and I don't answer back, which is, I'm just kidding. She doesn't like not being talked to. She's not fully recovered, Mark. Well, I hope she fully recovers soon. So the topic tonight of the first holster is about progress. It's about benchmarks. And it's also about reminding yourself where you came from, what you've developed, and giving yourself a little bit of a pat on the back because as a small business owner, it can be very easy to be focused almost entirely on what's going wrong, the next problems, the next supply issues, pricing, marketing, website updates, all this stuff, all the shenanigans. And so we all waiting until there's a minimum fulfilled. Nicholas, there's going to be no order of any kind until I have a certain minimum. They won't make them for me unless I have a certain minimum. Once I have that minimum, they'll be making the batch all at once, and I should be then receiving them all in and fulfilling them all at once. But no, we're at least several weeks out because they don't stock the adapters. We have to have the batch of adapters made. Yeah, what's that restaurant with all the stuff on the floor? It's Shenanigans? Oh! So here's my first holster without further ado. This is a Glock 30, an old Gen 2.5, so no rail under the dust cover. This was my first Glock. Just show you it's safe, chamber's empty, mag is out. This is my first holster. It is a integral paddle. This had some moleskin on it, so there's still some adhesive left on here. Hello, Will Silk. 2 adjustment screws for retention. No definition to speak of. Basically no sight channel. But the gun goes in and doesn't click, but it's plenty secure. And when I first made this holster, this would have been summer or fall 2008. I forget exactly when. This was like, I didn't start selling right away, so it was at least months of work before I started selling holsters. This worked just fine. And now, obviously, it's not what I would recommend, but at the time, 2008, there was no Kydex Pro forum. There was no Kydex business owners group on Facebook. John Hoffman hadn't made a single holster yet. There was no Philly EDC on YouTube. There really wasn't almost anything out there in terms of resources for holster makers to work with. And so, you know, I just did what I could with what I had, which was the tools I already owned and what I figured out by heating up plastic and messing around with it. And I think there's been a culture change. I'm sure there's been a culture change, but I wanted to try to put my finger on it because it sometimes comes up in these discussions of whether or not the new guys should get spoon-fed. And I think that guys like I did who started making holsters before there was injection molded hardware available for retail sale, for wholesale to holster makers, before there were dozens and dozens of color options and textures and prints, all this stuff. Is your wife's name Meredith? Hi, Meredith. Before there was any of that, a lot of us were making holsters. And the only way to get stuff done was to figure it out for yourself. Sourcing hardware was 9/10 of the job. Like, if you could find... So I mocked this up. This is not the original hardware because the original hardware would have been finish washers I got off eBay that were kind of a greenish black. Standard steel hex drive, 3/32 drive, flat head, 832 screws from my local hardware store. They rusted really fast. And then aluminum, non-slot backed screw posts from my local hardware store. Just horrible hardware. So this is just thrown together with some regular hardware from DIY holster because I had to put the adjustable retention in to get the gun to fit. This has not had hardware on it for a long time. It just sits on a shelf at the back of my shop. And every once in a while when I'm cleaning, I come across it and go, oh yeah. So this was it. And for what I needed at the time, which was a place to carry my gun and that was reasonably concealable, I carried this basically just behind the hip. It worked fine. I managed never to break it, even though it's an integrated .080 paddle. Not super secure. If I took it to a class right now, I'd probably hate it, probably pop off. Yeah, the aluminum break like a potato chip hardware. Yeah, aluminum hardware for a long time, aluminum screw posts, binding posts, which came from the office industry, where they were used instead of thick D-ring binders to bind together large sheafs of paper for catalogs and things. That's what we were adapting. Nobody else had steel ones. And I remember one time looking at the Raven Concealment website when they were still making almost all their belt attachments out of Kydex, but seeing that they had, well, I mean, I remember vividly when they first had injection molded belt loops, and I was just like, look at that. It's beautiful. They didn't have to make those one at a time. and then they had slot-backed screw posts. And my mind was just, just racing, trying to figure out where did they get these from, what industry would have these. And what I eventually ended up doing was finding a security fastener company that made unusual hardware and getting tens of thousands made on my own spec out of 18/8 stainless. Hello, Roger Perez. But hardware was a big deal when good hardware was hard to find. Like if you didn't have good hardware, it showed that you were a hobbyist. The quality of your hardware was what separated the men from the boys back in 2008, 2009. Hello, Jefferson Brooks. Thank you for sharing the video. I would very much appreciate it if you're here watching. If you get value from these, please share them around. If you're a holster maker, drop a text on your phone to some other holster maker you're friends with and talk to, and invite them to come here and watch this. So for what it is, it's nothing fancy. I heated up the Kydex, so I basically made a cardboard template so I could fold it all together and make sure that it would fold it the way I wanted. It was really more designed with a competition cut, even though now it would fit an RMR. Nobody was putting RMRs on pistols that I knew about at that time. And I made myself a cardboard template out of like cereal box and folded it up and marked my lines and then trimmed it up with scissors to make sure that I could, unfold it back out. And then I laid that out on my Kydex. I bandsawed it out. I rough sanded it. I heated it up, and then I folded it up. Hello, Adam Pinney. Adam Pinney's here. Raven Concealment's in the house. I used to envy, long before you worked for Raven Concealment, and Adam, I envied their metal hardware on their holsters. It was like something I hunted for and wanted, and now I've got my own, which is cool. But I definitely wanted to scoop Raven and find out where they were getting those screw posts with the slots on the back. And so this method of templating and then laying it out, bandsawing it, heating up, folding it up, it worked. Hello, Nick Sags. It worked fine. It was not especially efficient. It wasn't fast, but it worked. And the end result was I could get a holster where I'd basically sanded almost all the edges before forming it up and had to do very minimal sanding and touch-up afterwards, which was nice. And then I got into a phase of using oversized plastic and doing all my cuts post-forming so I could make sure all my lines came out exactly where I wanted them in relation to the gun, because one of the issues with using a pre-cut piece is if you press it and it's not quite lined up, there's no extra material to work with. You just miss your margins. And you either reheat the piece and fold it back out and go again, or you throw it away and start over. But this is what got me hooked, because once I did this, I'm like, okay, like it doesn't have good clearance. The magazine release hits the paddle back here. I did mold a little dimple around it, so it's not like you can't, if you press the paddle in, you can't engage the magazine release and pop the mag loose. But it's really not optimal, and there's too much Kydex right here that gets in the way of my index finger. Hello, Tommy Tice. I got your email about the oil mist eliminator. You are on the list. But for what it was at the time in 2008, having basically no references to go on, no community to talk to about it, as a first holster, it functioned. Hi, Conrad Miller. And what I've seen in the culture shift I was talking about was that guys who grew up, started their holster businesses at the time where there were no resources, always default to, I'll figure it out myself first. Even if they ask, like if I ask a question in a forum or on a web group about how people do something, it's either purely out of curiosity because it's something I don't do, and I'm just like, wow, I'm impressed. How'd you do that? Just because I'm curious. But if it's something I intend to do myself, almost always I will think it through and at least attempt it myself beforehand. The only things I don't attempt are big expensive machine purchases. But like, holsters with a plastic and 20 minutes of time to experiment, no big deal. I'll spend it every time. And so I almost always come to those questions having done a bit of legwork to get ready to know how to ask the right question. Because I want to appropriately value the time of people who take their time to talk to me about stuff, and don't want to presume on them that they'll handhold me through the entire thing cheerfully. And so coming to it having done some legwork so you can ask the right questions, so you can ask informed questions, is a really good way to avoid the, I'm not going to spoon feed this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, catch. The flip side is guys who have grown up having access to resources, having access to other holster makers who would just talk to them, no strings attached. That changes the way they problem solve, and I think in an important way that they have missed something if their problem solving often gets short-circuited by not having an immediate obvious solution. If the first recourse is to go ask somebody else, then I think they're missing something valuable. And it's not valuable because it's the good old days, we did it ourselves and they should do it that way too, but because learning how to troubleshoot yourself is a critical part of being able to grow. And one of the things you're going to have to do as a small business owner, if you actually plan to grow, is you're going to have to hire. Hey, John Hauptman, troubleshooting is a learned behavior. And it can go, so I'm going to post a video on my Instagram, and I'll share it over to Facebook as well. I spent some time at SHOT Show talking to Aaron and Eli from BSD Holsters. And Aaron showed me one of his magazine carriers. Yeah, not just learning through experience versus Googling it, because, but like I have dozens and dozens of holster makers who I could call almost any time and ask questions of, and lots of other holster makers have that too. Guys have networks of other holster makers they talk to. It might be regional, it might be through a particular social media platform, or through a forum. It might be through a training environment that they share. A whole bunch of reasons guys have connections. But if the first option when you have a problem is to go ask somebody else outside your business how to solve it, you have to hire to grow. Yeah, you do have to hire to grow. If you are then the manager, if you have employees working under you, they're going to have problems that you have to troubleshoot for them. And you're not going to be able to take the employee's problem that you're responsible for and take it to somebody else outside and have somebody else solve it for you. The other thing that really gets lost, more with certain people than with others, it's not a consistent thing across the board, but one thing that can be lost is the self-confidence gained by doing it yourself. It's really encouraging to have a vexing problem and to try multiple solutions, to take notes, to think analytically, and to come up with a probable solution, test it, find out it works, do it a couple times, refine it, and end up with a good quality solution that you came up with yourself. And so self-reliance in the business is an asset to a point. Whenever someone asks me for help, I ask them what their first 3 ideas are and if they've tried any of them yet. That's a great way to gate that question, John. I sometimes don't do that. It depends on the person and it depends on the question. People are afraid of failure. People are incredibly afraid of failure. I've often learned more from the wrong way of doing things than from getting it right the first time. And that's one of the other things you lose. If you talk to somebody else who's experienced the failure and just guides you around it with a couple of tips, you don't learn about it on the same level, in the same way. And oftentimes those lessons are the building blocks that prepare you for other things down the road. And if those building blocks are missing, something is missing that you might need down the road. So I'm always recommending, when people send me a DM or they comment on a post or they send me a text and ask me a question, I always want to see what initiative they've taken and what ideas they have and what they've already tried. And it may be that they've tried and they've come really close to a solution I know will work, but they just got discouraged and gave up. And maybe I say, I think you should revisit that idea. Maybe you should try that particular way of doing it again. Tweak it this way just a little bit, see what happens. Or if they're going down a path that I've tried and I'm convinced is a dead end, I may just spare them the agony and say, look, I'm all for discovery through failure, but I tried that, and I'm convinced that it's a dead end. And I don't want you to burn up tons of time and heartache and a bunch of materials, especially if you're small and starting out. I don't want to see you get crushed by failure. What did Adam Penny say? Hey, brother, keep killing it. I'm headed out. Pay me direct later. Good to talk to you, Adam. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate your time. Have a good night. Enjoy your Friday. Kyle Shook. What did Kyle Shook say? Those moments of where you say to yourself, okay, that's how not to do it. Oh, yeah, man. I've thrown away trash bins full of holsters that were how not to do it. And, that's never going to stop. If you have a business and you want your company to grow, you're never going to stop learning the painful lesson of how not to do things. You'll hire a few people, and then you'll hire one and go, that was how not to hire somebody. Or you'll invest in equipment, and then later you'll go, that's how not to invest in equipment. Or you'll spend some money on some marketing, and it'll tank. And you'll go, well, that's how not to spend my money on marketing. A bit late, Eric Powell, what's up? Congrats on the new job. I'm really glad to hear that your leg is not as bad as it could have been, Eric. I'm excited for you. So keep hustling, and look forward to seeing what you're able to put out now that you're a little bit more mobile. Yeah, Eric, this was my first holster, real quick. It is a one-piece with integrated paddle out of .080 for a Glock 30. Has adjustable retention, doesn't click. It's purely a friction fit, but a fairly snug one, and the gun doesn't rattle around or fall out. But this is where I got started, and now I'm making stuff like, now I'm making stuff like this. Vacuum formed on a CNC mold. Fits a whole bunch of different models of Glock with an integrated weapon light, adjustable retention, and it clicks in place and has adjustable ride height. This is what I'm making now, and I wouldn't have believed it. I sometimes stop and tell myself, take a look at what you've got in your hand, Andrew, and realize, or just imagine, use your imagination for a second, and think about how you would react, old you, 2 year ago, 3 year ago you, would react to be handed something like you're making now and be told, this is what your shop is putting out now. Vacuum formed on a CNC mold, CNC cut and drilled. It's beautiful. By the way, I don't know if he's here right now, but Matthew Bills, how about that cut line? See that margin? It's about as tight as I can trim right there. It turned out nice. If I could see back then what I'd be producing now, I'm not sure exactly how I would react. I would be surprised. I'd be encouraged. Like, if you're climbing a mountain and then future self comes and talks to you and says, hey, look, here's some sweet pictures we took from the top of that mountain once you got there. The view was incredible. You're like, okay, I'm going to keep trucking because I know I'm going to get there. I just had a typing failure. Look at things I made a year and a half ago and then look at something that's in packaging and everything and don't believe it. Patrick Rohrman, I got the knife and the DVD today. They look awesome. I've got all my fingers. I did not cut myself, and I did handle the knife a bunch, and I'm still intact, which can only mean one thing. It's dull as crap. But Patrick knows that's not the truth. He knows that the air in my shop got cut, just amazingly, not my hands. So it's good to keep examples of your old work around for reference so you can look at them and remember what your priorities were, how you were working, remind yourself what tools you had on hand, to think about how much time each unit took you, to get an idea of just how the feel of your retention has changed. Like, I went from this, which sounds kind of like somebody stepping on bubblegum, to this. This is a 2-year-old holster. It's crispy. Like this, but even this is not as good as what I make now. This is my personal holster. I still carry this one. It's Old Faithful for me. But the product has changed so much over the years, and it's encouraging to look back and see how it's gotten better. So that really is worth doing. Occasionally dig out from your old bin of stuff. Hey, Rob Bettinghouse, thank you for stopping by. Please share the feed. it's good to go back and look at that stuff. Michael R. says, I'm just getting started and really making a lot of holsters. I want to step it up because I'm selling a lot. Michael, that's great. Selling a lot is a great problem to have. You can step it up by hiring. You can step it up by investing in equipment. You can step it up by streamlining your existing process and your existing tooling to do better batch work with less wasted time. Hey, Rob, say hello to Kate and the kids for us, for sure. But, you know, it's good to look back at what you've accomplished and say, yeah, realistically, I did that. I accomplished that. I used to be over here. Now I'm here. I'm headed over there. I'm going to keep going. Was that a built-in pad for appendix? Yes, Thomas, it was. Sure was. My holsters have it too. This one was designed for another company. Mine has a longer, slightly more angular one on the old versions. It's a little more smoothed out on the most recent ones. Hello, Greg Fackler. Hi, Kate Bettinghouse. But the ability to develop things and test them out and get good feedback. I hate seeing my own stuff. I regrind knives when I get a chance, says Patrick. Yeah, sometimes you'll have somebody come into your shop who was a longtime client and has an old piece of work, and you'll look at it and say, you know what, I would really like to just trade that out for you for a brand new piece of gear. And they won't complain, probably. I mean, maybe they'll complain. But a couple months ago, Nehemiah Bailey, I think it was, got a whole bin of holsters up in Indianapolis. Somebody turned them in, traded them in. And one of my older APL appendix holsters was in there. And he posted a picture. He was like, I think this one's Andrew Henry's work. And I'm like, yep, that's me. How does it fit? Is it terrible? And he was like, no, it's good. I'm like, oh, well, good. I was relieved. I'll send my old stuff in. I recently replaced the first holster I ever sold to a friend because I wanted to have a newer style. I didn't even recognize it at first, says Simeon. So I'm pretty confident I could still recognize every single holster I've made. And once you make a lot of holsters, you'll start to see the holster maker's fingerprints all over everything they do. The hardware choices, the cut lines, where the tool marks are, everything about it becomes very distinctive. Michael, it is a very open community, and you can gain tremendously from it, but it's also incumbent on you to contribute and make the community better for you being in it. I still carry our first holster we made, says Chris Williamson, Living Dangerously. It's probably not an appendix holster, though, so I mean, the gun could fire a whole mag off in a strong set holster, you'd be fine. But if it was an appendix holster, you'd be dead. You know, all that baloney. I haven't carried this first holster in a long, long time. I think by the time I made my third holster, this one got pretty much retired. It's terrible, says Chris Williamson. Yeah, I bet it is. So it's good to look back and see what you've made and be encouraged by the progress that you've made in the time you've been building your business. But it is also important to remember that you're only as good as what you produce now. And it's on you to make sure that every month you're raising the bar in some way. If you get to a point where you feel like, okay, I'm good, my business can coast from here. If you get to a point where you think you can coast, then something is wrong. And it's not that you have to be revising the product every month, but that you should be making the overall experience of your company to your consumers better month by month. It might be you streamline your production process a little bit and you buy back a few hours a week. And you spend that time making up some swag, or spend that time giving more in-depth answers to customer emails, or you spend that time going back. Here's an idea. Go back a year ago, just a calendar year, flip back 12 months to this month, 2016, pull some customer names that placed orders that month, cold email them, and check in and ask them, how is the gear working for them today? Say, it's been a year. I really appreciate your business. I wanted to check in and see how's the holster working for you. Do you still have it? Are you still using it? Is there any feedback you could give me that would be helpful in terms of improvements to the product? What are your thoughts on it? And that's unusual. Most companies don't do that. I remember being really surprised. I was in college, and one of my best friends, who you'll get to meet next month, because he's my new employee. One of my best friends, Daniel, you are late. Share the feed. One of my best friends bought a really nice high-end electric bass, an F bass, Furlaneto bass out of Canada. And he'd had it for a year or so, and then he got an email from the owner of the company, the founder, George Furlaneto Sr., like the guy. And it was just a quick note, Dear Eric, thank you for your business. I wanted just to touch base and see how the bass is working for you. Touch base. Yeah, bass player puns. And Eric and I were both surprised because none of us had ever had that. We hadn't had that experience with any other company. Nobody else that we bought stuff from on a one-on-one basis, not like here's a blasted out email with a survey 4 weeks later, but like a one-on-one email clearly typed as a one-off. Hello, Scott Jenkins. That level of customer service and customer care made an impression on me. Like I still think about it, and that was 10 years ago. And so find ways to free up time for you to improve the customer experience. John Crump, would you be interested in having your holsters reviewed by AmmoLand? I'd have to check, John. I don't usually solicit a lot of reviews, but I'm not opposed to it. Shoot me a message, and I will get back with you. I'll go through the comments tonight also, and I can shoot you a message. Kyle Shook is talking about unmarketing. So yeah, I think the guy's name is Scott Stetton. Unmarketing is really good. One of the points he makes about brand is that no matter what your logo is, no matter what your brand is, no matter what your marketing does, once people experience your company, that experience defines your brand. Most holsters nowadays really look alike. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I used to enjoy the creativity and difference in holster design. Seemed like Vigitac was someone I liked to follow. Vigitac is still doing awesome stuff. Companies that are at the top of my list of guys I look at who I find their work artistically satisfying and clearly distinctive: Zorn Holsters, Vigitac, Guncraft. Those are probably my top three for interesting, creative, aesthetic work. I don't know if I would always do, I know I wouldn't always do everything the same way they do it. I wouldn't solve each problem, each design challenge the way they did, but I look at their holsters and I can clearly respect the artistry and the cohesiveness of what they do. Like I look at a Vigitac holster and it looks like a Vigitac holster. It doesn't look like a mix of this and that and some other thing. It's very distinctive. Just joining the party, Adrian Concealment. I have that down jacket. Yeah, I got this marmot at TJ Maxx for $80. Good way to spend my Christmas money. I've been enjoying it. In my area, at least, Kydex Bolt Run is a new idea. Most only know leather or Black Hawk. Well, Mike, you have a huge wide open market. You better crush that. Got to run, says Tyler. Talk to you later. Yes, I will get back to you about those texts and get those features updated in that mold, Tyler. Don't worry. I'm on it. I'm back on my feet today. I was down sick yesterday. It was not fun. Just like, feeling gross. So when you look back at what you've done and how far you've come, it should give you confidence to go out and solve new problems, to go out and design more stuff, to try new tooling. Like every time I changed my forming process, when I went from a hand-built foam press that I clamped with C-clamps to a scissor jack press, that was a change. When I went from a toaster oven to a heat press, that changed. When I went from that foam press to my first membrane vacuum former, that was a big change. When I started building non-membrane vacuum formers, it became the Swift press. That was a change. When I got my first small CNC, that was a huge change. My second CNC was an even bigger change. Like, at every point of the growth of a business, you're going to have significant new challenges, and you're not going to be able to solve them in the same old way. Harrison, Guncraft stuff, they are works of art. Totally. Get one, and guys are like, I need a A beautiful leather holster for my barbecue gun. I'm like, have you seen Guncraft? Because everybody else at the barbecue is going to have their jaw on the floor if you show up with one of those classy outside the waistband with X300 Ultras in some murdered out color scheme that's just gorgeous. Future topic, marketing to LE and 3-letter agency for duty yet concealed use. If you mean by duty, having active retention, latch, strap kind of thing, I'm not a fan of it, and I don't market that. Marketing to agencies is really a challenge because you have additional hurdles. You have a policy you have to work around. Yeah, Triton holsters, John, are looking very clean. Ryan does very nice work. If you want to sell to an agency, they probably have a written policy that has guidelines you have to follow. Your gear has to fall inside. There may be 1 or 2 key people in the department who are the gatekeepers who either give you the thumbs up or down on getting your foot even in the door to testing. It's one thing to sell holsters to guys who are on an agency or on a department for their off-duty carry, but getting your stuff approved and signed off on for department-wide sales for on-duty carry is just a different animal. That's where local networking really, really matters. It will almost always be easiest to do that kind of networking, and departments can be price sensitive, says John. Yeah, they can be, but on the flip side, sometimes they're not especially price sensitive because it's budgeted money and they're going to spend it no matter what, and they're just deciding who to spend it with. They're not deciding whether or not to spend it. It's allocated, it's going to get spent. But this is where local marketing, this is where being involved at your local ranges, being involved with your local police station, knowing the officers, going on ride-alongs, is networking time well spent. I'm right outside DC. 90% of my clients are 3-liter guys. Just means you should have some flexibility in the price structure of the product. Yeah, if you want to do a volume sale, if you want to sell 60 or 100 of something to one agency, you're going to have to be flexible on price. They're almost never going to expect to pay full retail, and they shouldn't expect to pay full retail. If I'm buying 80 identical units from you, I ought to get a discount. But each of those challenges, it's a marketing challenge, it's a branding challenge, it's a networking challenge, it's a production challenge. And if you are creative about how you solve that problem, there are tons of doors you can get opened for you there. And every time you get an agency using your stuff, that's leverage to get additional agencies. So if I had DHS carrying my stuff and I wanted to sell to Secret Service, or wanted to sell to U.S. Marshals, saying that a major 3-letter agency, or say the FBI had my stuff, telling one 3-letter agency that another major 3-letter agency is currently using my stuff and it's on their approved list is much more likely to get me in the door than saying, well, I occasionally make holsters for off-duty carry for my local county sheriff. Not that your local county sheriff is nobody, but if you want to sell to big agencies, people who train the agencies are good targets. And so what I said about there being gatekeepers, the gatekeeper is not always the person who writes the policy or signs off on the purchase order. The gatekeeper can be the person that first person trusts for opinions about what should be vetted for gear, what's worth trying and what qualifies. So if you had a guy who was a 20-year veteran of the Secret Service and was one of their in-house firearms instructors, trained lots of their new guys, if you got him excited about your gear, then that's a great way to get your foot in the door with the agency and with lots of the other guys he trains. Good night, Thomas. Have a great evening. Thank you for stopping in. But how you brand yourself is less how you, so the colors, logo. By the way, on logos, just generally, always, especially on a phone, in a mobile world, less is more. If I have to read small text in your logo and it's watermarked on a small corner of your image, it's not helping. Keep your logo big, bold, and simple. How How come no one has really tried to compete with Safariland for duty rigs? Harrison, the biggest reason is because the work and the money that goes into developing a proprietary hardware system for all the latches and the mounts and everything is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's why. And to be able to compete with Safariland, the quantity, the volume you have to be able to produce is humongous. But Safariland also has patents. I'm not sure all their patents are still valid. I think some of them have expired. Hello, Jeff Wilder. RDR is on time. You caught the live feed while it's live. Jeff, for a prize, I will invoice you tonight for those trim molds. That's what you win. Safariland has enormous resources. They've been in the game a long time. I believe Bill Rogers developed a lot of their stuff, and there are a number of patents on it. Like their process for laminating leather to kydex was patented years and decades ago. That's going to be painful. No, Jeff, it's not going to be that bad. But Safariland, it's like, why have we beat Safariland? Well, Safariland had a 25-year head start. Anybody who thinks that they're just going to overcome a 25-year head start and the institutional knowledge and the efficiency and the process and the equipment and the networking and connections you build over a 25-year head start in the industry, anybody who thinks that you can just jump in and just attack that, I mean, you can attack it, but the idea you're just going to beat it or take a significant chunk of it away is just ludicrous. Like, what's involved in developing a proprietary level 2 or level 3 system where you have all the parts manufactured and you can get them in quantity and they all work together. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Or not. That's really hard to do. That's a level of engineering far beyond what most holster makers have the ability to do. But if you want to be that guy and you want to go hunt Safariland and take part of their market share, more power to you. There's never been a better time in the holster industry for somebody to try that play because there's more awareness of the product, more people are interested, you'll have more traction, and you have more options to market yourself inexpensively. RDR does a fair number of department sales. He says, find the trainer. That guy is the dude to get a hold of. I mean, yeah, there are companies that have big brands. Like, none of us, if you're watching my feed, 10 to 1, if I offered you a Phobos holster, you wouldn't want it. But Phobos does tons of holster sales. Huge numbers of people buy their stuff. And so they've got a brand, and the brand really does have equity. The brand equity matters. And it allows them to continue to keep going and going and going and going and going. Like, when you have that much momentum, when you're that big a company, you've got that much capital, you have that much already in the bank in the sense of reputation and track record. You really have to screw up a lot over and over and over again to tank something like that. Like, it takes a lot to burn something like that down. It's not impossible. Team Wendy did it. Remington is in the process of doing it. Remington. But if you build a good brand, it takes more than one bad incident usually to wreck the whole brand. But what Stetton was talking about in unmarketing, the idea that how customers experience your brand is what defines the brand, not how you market it, but how the customers experience it when they interact with your company. That's crucial because you can have the coolest customer, you can have the coolest logoing, the coolest Instagram videos, the coolest packaging. I've never heard anybody say, this new holster is garbage, the fit is terrible, I can't stand using it, but the packaging was amazing. 10 out of 10 would buy again. Nobody does that. Nobody says, you know, this new knife that I got is just trash. The blade steel is junk. It doesn't hold an edge. The mechanism is gritty. The lock jams. Like this knife is just awful. But I love their logo. It looks so good. 9 out of 10 would buy again. You know, people don't, once they experience the product and the service of the company, what you put out as your intentional marketing and branding becomes much, much less important to them. I have customers who would recognize my logo if they saw it, but probably the defining feature of their interaction with with my company is not even the product, but it was the customer service they got from me. It was, you know, an email response to their question about a product at 12:45 in the morning. Like, oh, hey Joel, just got your email. Here's the lowdown on how those two attachments play together. If you have questions, hit me back. Send. And like, if you're a big company, big companies who have a reputation for not answering emails, G-code, G-code. Compared to that, a small business where the owner answers the email within a couple hours is a night and day difference. That's where you can win on brand without having any of the capital that those big companies have. I'm not saying G-Code's a bad company. I'm saying they've gotten big and it's really hard for them to maintain consistent high quality customer service when everyone there at G-Code is so busy because they've got so much work. But I think what happens is, starting off, when you're a small company, you've started making a product, you don't have a lot of sales yet, customer service is unavoidable because you have to talk people into buying your product. Like, if they send you an email, you're like, oh, a potential customer, let me email that guy back right now. But once you get to a point where you've got some momentum, your web store is up, you got a couple of good YouTube reviews, you're getting traction, your Facebook and Instagram follower numbers are up, you're getting orders regularly, you've got a shipping solution in place, like things are starting to move along smoothly, it can be tempting to think that you can just step back and just trust the machine of your marketing, of your social media content, and that the customers will keep rolling in. Or you get so much work that you find yourself throttling the customer service time in order to put more time in on the shop floor and get units done to try to keep your lead times down. But customers love getting products on time, but they also really, really love a personal touch. I must have had great luck with G-Code then because I connected with them about a half dozen times and I got responses within hours, says Ben Miller. I'd say, Ben, that that's probably unusual. Not out of the question, but I think that's probably not the norm. Hello, Chris Johnson. I hope you had a productive day of reading marketing books. But if you create from you down, made it. Yes, you did make it, Chris. I would love it if you would share the feed. I'm not going to be on a whole lot longer because my voice is kind of shot and my mouth hurts because I burned my mouth on hot coffee. So I'm going to cut it a little shorter tonight. But your ability to create a culture as you grow your business, when you hire your first employee, it's on you to teach them to value the customer to the highest level possible. It's on you to create a culture of customer service that exceeds your customers' expectations. And then whenever you start finding that customer service time starting to be choked because you have so many other demands on your time that you can't get to the customer service, okay, it's easy to think, yeah, that is what happens when I eat coffee, Patrick Rohrman. It's easy to think that customer service is kind of the bottom of the ladder because customer service doesn't usually pay bills. Orders and fulfillment, product pays bills. But here's the thing. If you want repeat customers, if you want customer advocates, if you want clients who will stay with you long term, who will talk your brand up when you're not looking, who will refer their friends to you and recommend you to their coworkers, who will talk you up at the gun range and mention you when they're out shooting IDPA, if you want those kind of guys who will get the P320C Army holster contract, I would be very surprised if G-Code did not get it because they've already got the tail end of the Army contract for the M9. Will you let your new employee get involved in the customer service side? Absolutely. Absolutely. Plan to from the first week. But when you have an employee or you have an assistant or you have your wife help you or you have your kid help you, you have to teach them how to do what you want done. And in some sense, it will be easier for them, and in some sense, it will be harder for them. One way it's easier for them is if you're the customer service rep and you're not the one signing the front of the checks, it's easier for you to give the customer free stuff because you're not paying for that free stuff. If you're the business owner, giving the free stuff, if you're a small company, if you're the business owner, giving the free stuff means even more because you're the one paying for it. The 320 will start rolling before the M9 contract is done, but I would be surprised if G-Code is not at the top of the list for that. And G-Code had new P320 holsters released a week ago. Yeah, I think G-Code probably had an inside line on that. I'd be surprised if they didn't get some advance warning. It would be stupid of the Army to not at least give their current suppliers a good crack at it because there are so many additional costs in changing vendors that it would be irresponsible to not at least give your current guy a crack at it. That's my thinking at least. You're like, well, free markets. I'm like, yeah, but like efficiency. Come on. You're going to hit the new guy for some free stuff, says Patrick Warman. Okay, I'm going to have a do not feed the bears list. And guys like Patrick Warman are going right at the top of it. So my new employees, like, if any of these names contact you, legally they can't. Well, what I mean by that is that they should at least make sure to get those existing companies in competition. Like, it would be, okay, maybe I could be crazy. I don't know exactly what the law says, but it would be stupid if the law said that every time there was a major change in the sidearm, that they had to go find the new holster company. That would be ridiculous. Who's competing besides Blackhawk, Safariland, and G-Code? I don't know, Harrison Jones. You? Maybe? Go out and buy 30 CNC mills, 150 employees, 70,000 square foot warehouse. Go to town. Do it. But the positive customer service experience that you can give to a client is overwhelmingly valuable. This is Gary Vaynerchuk, The Thank You Economy. If you haven't read The Thank You Economy, read The Thank You Economy. Who has the capacity? Not very many companies do, John, but you don't necessarily have to prove that you are already operating the capacity. You have to prove that you've got a good quality product and that you can bring the capacity online in time. So I would be very reluctant to try to compete for a contract like that unless I was within easy striking distance of that volume of capacity. But if I was within striking distance of that capacity, if I was a middle-sized company, I would look very hard at trying to hit that contract. But there's a dirty little secret to government contracts, which is when you're on the hook, you're totally on the hook. I did 3 DoD bids before meeting Andrew. We won based on price and lead time, says Jeff. If you were going to compete for a multi-million-dollar contract, that involves a lot of capital outlay on your end. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars of Kydex. I mean, that's semis of Kydex. That's, the amount of equipment involved in fulfilling an order that size is, I don't know what the lull, people are laughing at something. Let me scroll back up. Yes, John, they obviously can't give preference, but I would think that they would want to do everything possible to make sure that the companies that already have contracts, if they want to get in on the next round of attempted, competition for the next contract, get in on it. I understand the danger of favoritism and companies getting an inside line, but at the same time, like, the idea of the government wasting huge amounts of money testing out, going through the motions of having an open testing procedure when there are really only a few companies in the world that have the chops to actually produce it. Like, just spare us, just get it done. So, I don't know. The part of me that likes efficiency is frustrated by laws that sometimes force time to be wasted just for the sake of saying we wasted time. Let's all do, we can crowdsource it. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's get multi-molds to make an official Army contract mold. Everybody buy one. We'll all put in a huge order. We'll divide up the sheets. Everybody gets 4 4x8 foot sheets, and then we all bang out holsters. That'll be great. It's like a reverse group buy. That is what they have to do. It makes no sense, says John. I believe you. Well, all I was saying was oftentimes government stuff doesn't make any sense. But if you get the contract, they don't cut you a huge upfront 100% check and then say deliver on time. Like, there's some give and take. And if you have a big contract, you can get stuck on cash flow because you don't necessarily have control over the timeline. They can change it and you can't. Yeah, we're gonna crowdsource the new U.S. Army contract for SIG 320 holsters, Justin. That's the plan. Late to the party, Ahmad. Let's see it. Here it is. Glock 30 holster, one piece, fold over outside the waistband paddle. Integrated paddle out of .08 with adjustable retention. Gun goes in, doesn't click, but fits securely. There's not a lot of wobble. It's pretty firm. This worked fine for a while until I made holsters 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then I stopped carrying this completely. I don't have a lot of interesting contract work myself currently. I suppose I may revisit that sometime later in 2017. But probably the biggest reason is that what I specialize in making, like bearing appendix holsters, are not currently a real hot item for government contracts. Not a lot of agencies are having most of their guys carry a Glock 17 with an X300 Ultra appendix. You know, the Department of Overwhelming Testosterone, maybe they are. And if you have contacts there, hook me up. I want to win that contract and make lots of appendix light bearing holsters for those guys. But look back at the stuff you've made. Be honest with yourself about the hurdles you've overcome, the progress you've made to get where you are. Give yourself a little pat on the back, a little bit of a morale boost, and then get back out there, because you're only as good as what you're making currently. And what almost always happens is as companies get big and they get more successful, the people who really, really care about the product just end up losing touch with it because of the size of the place. And the quality goes down. It would keep the supply line open in case someone wanted to bomb holster manufacturers. Hard to bomb 1,000 small shops. I don't think anybody wants to bomb holster companies. We're so innocuous. Like, what do we make? We make Tupperware for guns. Who could object to that? Going to send you a PM, Andrew. Sounds good, Chase. But if you want to go after a contract, here's my top 5 things. Get a second opinion from a lawyer. Have them look at the contract. Make sure you know completely all the fine print. Be very, very careful. Number 2, have an honest, not best case scenario about your realistic delivery time. Don't say, like, on a good day when I've had all the coffee, I can get this many holsters done per hour, and then extrapolate that number out over 12 weeks straight and think nothing is going to happen in that time that could possibly go wrong. Because believe me, crap in your shop will start breaking as soon as you start working on that contract. It's just going to happen. Plan to bring help in. If you get an order for 250 holsters, pay somebody. No, don't even make them an employee, but for that order, pay somebody to come in, show them how to put all the hardware together, and pay them for the assembly. Don't do that yourself. Get CNC molds made. If you've got a bulk order and it's a whole bunch of identical units, you're not going to want to be doing the mold maintenance and the mold verification to make sure all your blocking is still in the same place and your tape didn't shift after holster number 93. Hello, Shane Muse, you're way late. Share the feed. This is my first holster. It's all .08 with an integrated paddle. It's an outside the waistband paddle holster with adjustable retention. Gun doesn't click, friction fit, but it worked. So get CNC molds and then have a backup plan for your cash flow. You are a small business. Cash flow kills small businesses. Poor planning, not being able to get the materials you need on time, not being able to pay bills at the right time, getting caught between bills and invoices you put out is a great way for your company to get hung. So if you're going out on a limb on a contract, have a backup plan for cash flow. That could be a family friend, that could be a family member, that could be a line of credit from a local credit union, that could be something. Have some parachute there so that if anything happens, you get sick, you miss delivery, they change the size of the order, anything happens, you're not left holding the bag with no options and just end up riding that down, you know, Dr. Strangelove style. Woo! On top of the bomb. You don't want to be that guy. So the other thing that's really helpful is talk to somebody else who does government contracts. There are other holster companies who have done small agency and department work and medium-sized agency and department work. Pretty much only the big companies. Your grandfather just shared my video, says. My grandfather just shared your video, says Ben Miller. Awesome. So we're living in a golden age of American small manufacturing. Like, it has never been easier for a small company to get incredibly good quality equipment, get it quickly, to be able to get the financing you need if you need to scale your business. It's never been easier to market your product on social media with very little dollars and only time involved. Like, this is a golden age of small American manufacturing. And guys who are going after it aggressively and are taking risks and taking leaps and bounds and growing their business, like, those guys are winning, and it's awesome to see. Do a lot of agencies work about 6? I don't know what that means, Shane. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. I saw Chris Wimmer just got here. Hello, Veil Solutions. I'm curious to talk to you more about that $3,000 holster. Looks really nice. I'd like to check one out. I'd love it if you'd send me one to play with. But that's going to be it for me. I've got to turn the mill back on and trim some more shells for Matthews Fabrication. And I got to finish up some mold design revisions for Tyler Connor from TXC Holsters. And then I've got a whole bunch of emails to respond to because I've still been getting a lot of mold quote requests post-SHOT Show. So back to the grind on Friday night. Thank you guys all very much for stopping by. I especially appreciate those of you who come for most of the video and share the feed while you're here. That's a huge help for me. It makes it very gratifying for me to be able to talk to new people and have new people show up and watch the feed. So check out my Instagram post or my Facebook post about that oil mist eliminator. If you are a holster maker and you have a Robinair 15800 and it makes mist, you should put an eliminator on it to knock that mist down. It probably won't kill 100% of it. If I do a lot of vacuum forming, I can still see a little mist coming out of the filter, but it definitely improves the situation. Take care of your health. Don't breathe in all that oil. Do what you can to keep your shop air clean to breathe. So if you want in on that, send me an email, orders@henryholsters.com, and let me know. Pricing is going to be about $88 to $90-ish for a set that has the oil mist eliminator, the adapter, 2 filters, and the clamps you need to mount it on your vacuum pump. So have a great night, guys. Thank you for stopping by. I will see you next week for the next live feed. Take care.